Our next session is titled The Resilient Consumer. This session will again be moderated by Catherine Carlson, whom I invite to the stage together with the panelists. Thank you, Catherine.
Maria Paula, Hank. Awesome.
That's very good.
Wonderful. Okay, welcome back. I hope we're all well caffeinated. And we're all filing back into the room. Amazing. We're going to kick off. So, welcome back to this session, The Resilient Consumer. I think as we all heard from Class Not this morning, young people are dealing with a lot. It's hard out here to be a young person. I think we have some young people in the room today who came for the conference. Welcome to all of you. So it's not easy to be a young person today. And the EU's financial system needs to evolve to meet the challenges that they're facing. Challenges like economic shocks, digital transformation, an aging population. These are some of the issues that we're going to dig into on this panel, talking about how to build lifelong financial resilience for the next generation, focusing on financial literacy. We're going to talk about technology. We're going to talk about innovation, and also how supervisors can adapt to meet these challenges. So let me introduce our lovely panel. We have Saskia von Berlo, Project Manager at the International Office of the European Youth Parliament, Alexandra Machinska, Managing Director at Better Finance, Nick de Maskelk, Director General of BIPA, the European Federation of Insurance Intermediaries, Maria Paula Guimarães-Baum, Senior Product Manager at Zeva, and Henk Beckert, Member of the Management Committee of the Financial Services and Markets Authority. But before we kick off into the discussion, we're going to watch a brief video, Young Voices About Insurance and Pensions.
Insurance? Bro, I used to be raw dogging life. No backup, no plans, just vibes.
Then I bought my phone and realized life be collecting else like Pokemon cards.
I did use insurance once. I thought it was gonna end in a whole catastrophe. But it was actually a win. Quick refund, no drama, and it kinda restored my faith in adulthood.
Honestly, picking insurance was me scrolling at 2 a.m. Zero guidance, just intuition and suffering.
And whenever someone talks to me about pensions, my brain just goes, do not disturb. Like, why are you talking to me about 2070? I'm trying to survive this month, girl.
I swear pension systems are like the final boss in a video game. I'm just standing there with a wooden sword, like what now?
And the info, just too much of a formal language. I need subtitles for the subtitles. Just give me one clean video, a meme, a chart, or something my brain can digest without overheating.
When I need info, I'm not reading a 40-page PDF. I'm asking my group chat, TikTok, or my mom if it's really serious.
If you wanted to hit, just show me my life with savings and without. Broke me at 70 years old. Looks tragic. Trust me, I will change.
To make this relevant for us, just be honest. Tell us what happens if we ignore it. Tell us what happens if we don't. Clear buttons, big fonts, maybe a little sparkly emoji, just to keep me going, if you know what I mean. Insurance, my friends explain it like this. Bro, it's basically paying so future you doesn't suffer. I mean, put the fries in the bag, keep it pushing.
Okay, great video, no cap. If you don't know what that means, ask your kids. Let's kick off the discussion. Let's talk about the foundations of financial resilience. So as we've seen, young people, they're increasingly turning to mobile apps, they're turning to digital tools to manage their money. But how can we make sure that they have the knowledge that they need, the safeguards that they need to make informed decisions? Saskia, I'm going to come to you first. So in the video, we have people talking about, I'm just trying to make it to the end of the month. I mean, if you're a young person, it feels like pensions are very far away. How should we be talking to the younger generation in a way that feels real and that they can understand? And are there any kind of practical tools that would help them get the knowledge and support that they need to start saving?
Yeah, so thank you also first for inviting me and also for having the young people on the panel. I think it's very nice to represent young voices here as well. And I think something that they also highlighted is that, or that Petra also highlighted, is that the reality of young people right now is very different from the reality of young people in the 70s. There just isn't the same labor system, there isn't the same geopolitical stability or the same also economic systems that we used to rely on. And in these changes, I think young people just don't really see the rationale for investing in the future, not only because their economic reality of trying to pay their rent or trying to pay off their student debt is definitely impacting them a lot, but also because they can't really see a positive vision of the future. And I think what would be really good is if there can be a positive vision of the future shaped top-down to also showcase what is possible. And I think another element is the financial literacy, which I think is a huge topic and huge issue, which I'm sure you all are aware of, that this doesn't really get passed down as much. I think a lot of young people, also because the financial markets are becoming more and more complex, it isn't as simple as just one type of investment. You can do it from an app now. Like there's so many possibilities, a lot of high risk possibilities. And I think because young people have more and more access from a younger and younger age to different investments, it also would be good if they get educated about the complex, the risks and also the opportunities from a younger age, specifically in high school, because already you have finance bros that already when they're 16, 17, know all about trade, know all about EFTs, but you should also educate these people about the risks and educate the people that are not as interested in the opportunities as well, so that it also stays an equal playing field.
Okay. Alexandra, so when we're talking about these apps or these AI tools suggesting to people how to invest, what to be buying, how can we make sure that that information it's clear, it's fair, it's not misleading? What kind of safeguards do we need to be thinking about here?
Thank you very much for inviting Butter Finance to this panel. Well, AI tools, apps, as many other things, can be really a double-edged sword, so that they can help to improve access to financial products, including to insurance and pension products. But they can also, for example, industrialize the risks and the access to unsafe products. So in terms of safeguards, and I think it was also said and mentioned in the video, honesty is extremely important, and it's also reflected, it was reflected in some of Better Finance research. For example, on robo-advice, there is a lot of coming out when you use AI tools that can be misleading and unclear for people, also for young people that are usually much more digitally savvy than the average consumer and investor. So technology in itself, of course, is not a driver of poor outcomes, but it can magnify the existing failures in the market. So in order to address this, first of all, and also coming to the honesty point mentioned by one of the people in the video, you should have a very clear distinction for them to understand whether they are receiving advice, personal advice, and then subject to best interest and suitability rules, or general information on or behavioral nudge. So I would say really clear distinction between the three of them. Then coming also to the honesty point, transparency on cost, on performance, on the risks that also were mentioned by Saskia that not everybody understands really well. And here also the AI tools need to provide this information very clearly in a very transparent way. But since we have low financial literacy levels in the EU, as mentioned already, and also confirmed in our recent study that we have done together with the European Financial Planners Association on the financial health of Europeans, transparency alone is not going to do the trick. So it has to be really coupled with plain language and explainability, as well as comparability. And I was very happy also to hear that it was mentioned already many times in the previous panel and also the speeches, and very much underlined also by the incoming executive director, because the language that is quite often used is not easy to understand, it's not plain enough. This should be changing. consumers, and especially the young consumers, also they don't need more data, but they need to understand, for example, why this particular project and product is being recommended to them. So comparability here, definitely AI tools, apps can extremely facilitate decision-making process of consumers, also the young consumers. And we need comparative tools for them to be able to compare products and understand which one has the features that is suiting them the best. And I guess, last but not least, value for money. So this is something that is extremely important. And again, the research of Better Finance is showing that despite some good years, overall, in long term, too many of the pension products and long-term products here in the EU are underperforming, and they are not even able to compensate for the inflation. So, and here extremely important is as well that also the AI tools quite clearly disclose all the information that is necessary for consumers to understand if the value for money that they are going to be receiving by investing in and buying products is going to pay off for them. Mm-hmm. So I would say, in general, yes, AI apps and tools can be extremely helpful, can improve the consumer outcomes, but only if really comparability, good outcomes for consumers, good value for money, transparency and honesty are not negotiable.
Okay. Nick, I want to come back to you with a similar question. So when we're in this environment where people are getting their investment advice from social media or they're getting it from an AI rather than from a qualified advisor, what do you think are the main risks that we can see there?
Thank you. Now that I have the floor, I want to say happy anniversary to EIOPA and to all who are involved. I believe that what the EIOPA really triggered over the last 15 years is dialogue, is the dynamics of dialogue. And I thank you for that. I believe that is very important. And we still exist as a sector. That's also an achievement. I'm very happy also and honored, of course, to be here and to sit in the panel about young people. It's very interesting. And if we are talking about, I like social media, it's very entertaining. The problem is when you believe everything that is on there. And it's called also, I had to look it up at the AI, of course, it's called the echo chamber effect of social media. In fact, the only thing it does, well, not the only thing it does, but it reinforces your own belief. And when you have a little bit of experience in life, you can, let's say, nuance it and you can put that into question, you can challenge that, and then AI as social media can be very challenging in putting yourself into question. But the problem is that if you are young, and it's very nice to see happy young people and also very critical young people, I hear this, it's very good. So I have trust in the future on that. And perhaps they are, as they are born with all this, they are perhaps much more critical than my generation would be. So where we have the critical view on it from, let's say, experience, they may be born with it. So I think that is very good, and we have to think and look about it. The thing is that, of course, there are other dangers there, but okay, I don't have to do a speech about all these dangers. We all know this, but if we look at pension gaps, okay, I mean, we are talking here about something very serious. Some things are not simple. Some things need time to think about. So I'm sometimes, I was a bit afraid of the fast aspect of the new strategy of EIOPA. I think we need more time to think about things before they come into application. But okay, that's another discussion. But everything must be fast, everything must be smooth. I think thinking about your pension takes some time, and you can take some time. So we have very nice papers also by the ESAs that were published. I also see supervisory authorities do at national level kind of checklists of, okay, be careful when you are deciding about certain things. So of course we have the risks of misinformation, of making that price is, let's say, as too much importance, and there is not look for quality. We have the danger of not being adapted to your personal situation, overconfidence and all that. But I see light in that, because as I said, the ASAs are all doing something very interesting. Also to influencers, these what is it called, flyers with very good hints. There are rules that are applicable, marketing rules. There are rules in the IDD. If you give advice, you can become under the IDD. The problem is, and then my question is, does the supervisory authority has a mandate and the power to intervene in that area that is in fact outside of their mandate? And that is something where we have to watch, because if you first have to bring it in the regulatory framework, then of course you have a regulated entity. But if in the meantime there are influencers, let's say, who can do whatever they want, without the regulator or the supervisor having, let's say, the possibility to intervene, then we are somewhere in a problematic system. So one of the things there is perhaps that supervisory authority, something that's very easy and very cheap to do, is to do a mystery shopping on social media or a mystery shopping on AI. I really invite all the supervisors and everybody in the room to ask a couple of questions about your own situation to AI, about pensions, about life insurance and so on, and you immediately see where it goes, and it goes too far. But is there a possibility to intervene within the regulatory framework of the sectoral regulation? Do you have to go to see outside the sector regulation? I think there are opportunities. The matter is who is supervising this.
Okay, thank you so much. Maria, you obviously bring a lot of experience from the technology side of things, from product design. How should apps be designed so that people aren't just clicking buy, so that they actually understand what they're doing? What kind of features can be integrated to help users learn while they're using these apps?
Yeah, absolutely. I think our responsibility with providing this app is to provide a learning opportunity for the individuals, right? So one of the things we have to look out to when we build these things is in the moment of decisions, how can we insert some knowledge and really make them stop and think before they click the buy button, right? The problem with apps are not the speed, is not how fast you can purchase the product, but it's losing that moment that you can educate them a little bit more. To your point, you mentioned TikTok, you mentioned the Google it culture or the ChatGPT it culture, where everybody's kind of fact-checking, right? And they use this more critical thinking. We have the opportunity as an app to also put ourselves out there and inside a regulated environment, which we are, give them the best information possible in comparison to these not structured, regulated entities out there. So at the end of the day, the best products, they'll be able to teach the user as to what they're doing, what they're buying, and what the opportunity is looking forward as well. So we need to project also the risks and what are they giving money to, or the opportunity of growth in that simple situation. In essence here, what we're trying to do is mindful consumption of information to the deliberate necessary friction. So friction, most people see it as being bad, but in certain moments in life, it's necessary so you don't take a step well you might regret or cannot change. So that's how we usually look at it in the perspective of building these apps.
Okay, awesome. Henk, from the supervisor's perspective, so when we're in this environment where there's digital tools, there's social media influencing consumer decisions, what does that mean for supervisors? How do you react to that?
Yeah, maybe I want to start a little bit like we, the man in the panel, are the old ones. Yeah? The girls.
Like I didn't say it, you did.
And this gives an advantage. Yeah? So there was a comparison to the 70s when I was a teen. And in the 70s, as an individual, if you talk about pensions and a lot of other things, it wasn't a risk. The state provided with what was necessary. The employer provided what was necessary. I don't say it is a good system or a bad system, but you had not to think about it. Now the situation is completely different. The state can take less risks on it, so the pensions go lower, but also employers, they don't want to take risks. So We maybe will pay you a DC plan, but the risk are for you as an individual. And so more and more individuals have to take responsibility of what they do. So this is the paradigm that completely changed over 2 generations almost. And that means that if you as an individual have to take decisions, you need certain way of competence, but also be helped by authorities who organize, manage, supervise the entities who provide products and information. Are we there? I don't think so. I think there is a lot of things we still can do, but it starts from financial education, which is not the educational in the traditional way, but more giving people, young people, things to hold. So what type of questions should I ask myself? What are the risks that are there? And then I go further. Probably, and that's also important, intermediaries can play also a role. You should also say you can ask someone, and not only TikTok, but maybe real professionals for certain help, because pension solutions are very complex. If you ask people at 20, 25, they don't think about 70. They are hoping maybe to reach 40, 50, what will be my career, the children that I have, the family I have. So this is very, very difficult. So getting help, more professional, and avoiding that information that is bad or wrong is getting to young people, and I can come on later on that. But we had in Belgium, for example, a certain moment, a big fuss about invest now in virtual money and retire early. That was a big fuss at a certain moment. And it was completely wrong, and it was a scam at the end, because the people who promoted it put the money in their pocket. So there are scams, there is fraud, so we should tackle that, but there's also a lot of misinformation, forgetting something. So we should have the powers to look at that and to react on that. But the big issue is we are in a world where virtual is happening everywhere. So the time of thinking we do it at a local level, it's over. Even at a European level, it's over. We, as an authority, have a lot of contacts outside of Europe. It's coming from Israel, the fraud, or from Ukraine, from, let's say, many parts. And at the end, you need also good products. So products that give value for money, but also deliver on what you need. And that's also, I think, very important. And then we are talking more, let's say, European level. And there we should cooperate also more.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Now, it's your moment to get involved. We have our first Slido poll of the day, which I think the information should be coming up for that now. Which I'm currently not seeing it, but we will. Okay, there we go. So, in your opinion, what would most improve young people's financial resilience today? The options are earlier engaging financial education in schools, default auto-savings or auto-enrollment features in apps, plain language disclosures and comparators, AI with guardrails, or stronger supervision of design and dark patterns. Can we see the results in real time of this app, or did people not have the information to actually vote in it? Okay, in that case, we're going to do a show of hands instead. Who says financial education? Is financial education the most important part? Okay, we're seeing a few. Auto-savings, auto-enrollment. Okay, it's also a popular option. Plain language disclosures? No? Okay, Petra's a fan. AI with guardrails. Okay, not so popular. Stronger supervision of design and dark patterns. Any fans of that? Okay, I'm going to say, in my capacity as moderator, with an extremely unscientific, that auto-savings and auto-enrollment was the most popular option. So if you chose that one, you guys are the winners. And I'm completely disproven by the results of this poll. So what you're saying in person is different from what you're saying online. That's a lesson for all of us to take today for this session, I think. Okay. So let's move on. AI innovation and the future of supervision. We've talked about how the digital transformation is reshaping how consumers interact with financial services. Let's talk about the future. AI, large language models. What ethical frameworks and regulatory safeguards do we need to see to protect vulnerable groups while fostering innovation still? Saskia, so we've heard young people say they're not going to read a 40-page PDF. They want a quick, clear answer. Where should young people be going in the future for trusted information?
Yes, so let me first also comment. I think the insurance industry has already done a great job in the last maybe 5-10 years in actually simplifying this information. So very often you don't even have to read the 40-page PDFs to get the most essential information to know what is the risk and what is the cost. And thank you on behalf of young people for making this more simple. I also think the already mentioned comparison websites and also calculator tools really provide a lot of insight. But on the question of AI, which I think is quite central to this panel, I want to maybe mention that young people might be less inclined to trust AI than you might think, specifically because they are digital natives and they also see the risk that it poses. They see how it affects their own education. And a lot of young people also care about the climate. There was a research study released this week, actually, by the Allianz Foundation, which showed that across the political spectrum, there's a lot of differences, but some of the similarities are that young people care about the climate and they are in favor of more AI regulation. So I think this shows that even though AI is very digital and young people are digitally native and they definitely use AI a lot, it might actually not correlate to having that much trust or that much desire to have AI play such a big role in financial advice. At the same time, I think young people, because they might not have all the financial literacy and they also have a long time to go, so there's a lot to calculate, they might really benefit from a more personalized approach that AI could offer. So I would like to say that while AI could definitely be a good tool and it should be used, I think you shouldn't assume that young people will be more trusting. And I think having a clear indication of who is liable for the advice that the AI gives would really also support. Because now if a person gives you advice and they are like an accredited financial manager or they're from a bank or anything, you really have someone to call back upon, like, hey, you gave me bad advice. With AI, I think that's of course going to be a lot more difficult. So having clear liability in place, I think will be a big step.
Okay, thank you. Alexandra, so we're seeing AI chatbots becoming more of a sort of first point of contact for financial advice. What kind of risks are you seeing, particularly for vulnerable groups? And how can we make sure that those AIs are accountable and that they're aligned with the long-term interests of the users?
Yes, indeed. So AI, chatbots and other tools are increasingly really the entry door to financial products, including pension and insurance products. And if they are not designed properly, governed properly, they can be intimidating or misleading, especially for vulnerable consumers and those that are not digitally savvy, but even for those, they can be risky. And when you look at, again, financial and digital skills of European consumers, they vary across countries, across age groups. However, also across all age groups, as our recent research show, many of the European consumers are actually not very sure and comfortable with their own financial skills and literacy, and they see a lot of room for improvement. So what we have also seen in our research on robo-advisors and some other tools is that it is very difficult, if you wanted to compare the results you get from one tool to another one, and we use absolutely the same profile of investor or consumer, so the same risk appetite, the same age, the same investment horizon, the same investment goals, you get very, very different outcomes. And especially for vulnerable consumers that would like to check, for example, 2 or 3 options, it can be extremely misleading and left them maybe without making any decision in the end. So I was happy to hear that Saskia mentioned that especially young people may not have the problem of overtrust in AI, even though there is, I think, still quite a bit of a problem, especially for vulnerable consumers, and that they can really misinterpret what they are actually getting, what I was saying also in the previous intervention. And they may think they are getting personalized, objective advice, whereas in fact it is nothing close to that. And also chatbots, they really communicate with confidence. It may seem to consumer that this is something they can trust, where in fact quite often it is not. Then to other risks that I would see, digital exclusion, because of many of the consumers that are not digitally savvy and have poor digital skills. as well as bias and commercial steering. And of course, the consumers that are vulnerable with low financial literacy and digital skills are the least equipped to be able to detect this and stay aware when they are making or using those tools. So in terms of safeguards, mentioned already by Saskia, accountability is extremely important. So there is very clearly identifiable entity that is responsible for the AI outcomes. That there is human oversight. We have talked about it already before, and it is extremely important for consumers to know that they can turn into a human, at least at some point. Explainability and contestability, so that you can challenge what you are getting. And I think the most important is actually the best interest of consumer by design. So if you have those tools, you really have to also know that they actually are there for you. And in order for AI to help vulnerable consumers, it must be actually reducing the information asymmetry and not expanding it, and in the end resulting in poor outcomes.
Okay. Nick, let's talk about intermediaries. How can intermediaries mix AI tools with a duty of care, so focusing on issues like training and oversight to make sure that the advice stays appropriate?
Thank you. We cannot generalize. Intermediaries are having many jobs, and it depends upon what kind of intermediary you're talking about. Some of our intermediaries are really, let's say, those who are designing complex schemes for certain risks that are very difficult to insure, like cyber or NatCat and so on. Therefore, they use data, and they use AI for the non-structured data, for the analysis of that one. So that is one part. When you look at the distribution side of intermediaries, that is the majority of the intermediaries: the intermediation, the advice, the recommendation, the administration. Administration that is also done on behalf of insurers, so making the journey smoother and making sure that people can talk to somebody. So there we have an important role. I think, well, our intermediaries are using AI increasingly, but very carefully. Because in the insurance sector, we still have, or luckily we have, many structured data already. And when you talk with IT people or engineers who consult you in, okay, what kind of system are we going to set up? Their advice is to use structured data on the basis of algorithms, because that is much more certain and less costly. And only use, let's say, AI for those aspects that are very complex and where you can't find the structure in the data. So there we are in that part. Then for the rest, we are the opposite of all the, let's say, dangers of an AI. We see many people in our sector, when I talk to our members, they are saying, yeah, well, we come now with consumers who come and they come, oh, AI says this, Google says that, even they compare GPT with, and so on. So what do you have to offer? And that is fantastic, of course, because then you can have real conversation, and you are not the echo, but you are the mirror. And you, let's say, it's an almost educated client with whom you can have a good conversation. So I believe that there is the importance. And then, of course, intermediaries, they follow the rules. So we are regulated. And I'm not only thinking about the sectoral regulation of IDD. We are AML, we are GDPR compliant. We have to follow, we have about 20 sets of rules that intermediaries have to comply with. That is also a role for society, because if we do the AML test, well, somebody else doesn't have to do it. So that is part of the game, if I may say so. And of course, we are this human factor in an AI world. And it is not or, it is and. And there are people who feel much more comfortable buying online. There are people who are much more comfortable having a conversation. But when there is an accident or when there is a claim, then people like to talk with professionals. So we solve, let's say, the problem of the echo chamber effect. And when we use AI, we use it with a professional eye, because our experience, our know-how, can test whether an AI result is logic, not logic, wrong, not wrong. And for the rest, Alessandra mentioned already a couple of things that are in the rules, AI rules. So when you are with health or high risk in a high risk insurance environment, you have of course to apply extra rules. But for the rest, I refer also to the EIOPA guidance, and that is something where of course that is taken into consideration when our intermediaries use AI, our associations do training. Yeah, so we really try to answer the requirements or the dreams of our young people in order to make sure that the entire complex procedure become also a bit smoother. I think that's good, yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Maria, let's talk a little bit about the development of AI for financial services. What kinds of ethical considerations do we need to be thinking about in terms of preventing biases, making sure that there's transparency, making sure that it's, you know, representing the interests of the users? What should we be thinking about there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think on the ethics side, what we have to understand is that AI needs to be clear and not mystical, right? I mean, a lot of people look into these AI tools and they don't really understand what goes on behind. AI is really the surface, the way it interacts with the user in terms of language. But behind it, what we have to keep in mind is that there's a lot of algorithms that you mentioned, right? It's a lot of deterministic rules that goes into building such AI tools. So when we look on the way that these financial regulated entities that are using this AI native approach to building new solutions and app, you have to keep in mind on how to ask the right questions as to how are you building it. Is it just a wrapper, which we call, of ChatGPT, where you're just dropping a name and allowing for people to ask questions, but there's no real guardrails or algorithmic situations behind? Or are these individuals using AI mostly for the communication purpose to make it clear to the user? And which is also a very good thing, right? Because on complex situations, with pension, for example, is quite a complex topic, it can break it down to the language of the individual who is speaking to. And the personalization comes to hand, right? You're talking to a younger individual, you're talking to someone in their 40s, it's a different way to communicate. You can account for someone in their 40s to know a little bit more than the younger individual would. So therefore, on the ethical side, it also comes down to what is your intent with the AI? What are you building it for? Is it to sell, which will become pushy and it will perhaps communicate in a way that is not the best? Or is it the intent to educate along the way, right? The selling should happen throughout the process of the application or the form and so on. But the AI should be there to really give the opportunity for you to ask the questions, and the AI needs to be reliable to answer you in a factual manner, right? Not assuming things, but really reading from the documents behind and the algorithms behind to give you factual information. So that's how we approach it.
Hank, let's talk about supervision. Obviously, digital finance, this is sort of the ultimate cross-border thing. It's very difficult to supervise on a national level. What steps do you think EU supervisors can be taking to harmonise the enforcement of that and to protect consumers? And how can national authorities cooperate across borders to tackle scams, to tackle harmful design, these kind of challenges?
What you're asking, there are two topics in it. Mm-hmm. So you have the topic of, let's say, institutions providing information, pushing products, so on. And there we have rules, European rules, and they should apply these rules correctly. If we find as a host or as a home that it's not correct, we should cooperate fully and address the problems as soon and as quickly as possible. And I think that's clear. Big cooperation within Europe is essential. Beside that, you have, let's say, what we call more fraud. So propositions which are on the web, and at the end, you lose money. And it's not a regulated entity, it's coming even from outside of Europe. And there you have other possibilities as an authority. And then we think more international collaboration, it can be OSCO, EIS, and so on, to work together, if it's in the insurance world or pension world. But sometimes it's even outside of that. We are trying to get money, which let's call an insured product or a fund or something like that, but there is nothing behind it. So we put the money inside, and then you have to cooperate, not, let's say, with other financial authorities, but with the judicial authorities, with police and so on. And so in Belgium, we have good cooperation. Then when we see that there are websites which are really fraudulent, we can, if someone clicks on it, we can give a warning page and saying this is fraud. It's very difficult to get the website away. Sometimes we can do that. We have successes, but this intermediate page that say this is a fraudulent page is working very well. We produce lists of bank account numbers which are fraudulent. So go to our website, we say it to our population, go to our website, control if the entity is known by us, it's a fraudulent thing, is the using a bank account that is fraudulent. We put out warnings taken up by normal press every day almost. So, but it is another way of working. Try to avoid that scams at the end. People lose money, and people do lose money. Eh? In Belgium, last year it was about 40 million euros lost because people didn't take account of the possibilities to avoid it.
Brace yourselves. It's time for another Slido. Do you think AI will replace human financial advisors in 10 years? And the answers are yes, no, or maybe. I'm going to give you a moment. Okay, maybe is not showing up on the results. Either nobody's voted for maybe or it wasn't an option. Okay. No is doing better, although I suppose this room probably has an interest in not being replaced by an AI. Okay, I think this is quite a clear majority in favor of no, so I'm glad we solved that one. Let's open it up to some questions from the floor. We have some roving mics in the back, I believe. Any questions? I'll give you a moment to warm up. No questions? Maybe people need a moment to warm up. In that case, I'm going to come back to everyone with the same question. If there was one policy change that you could implement to make people more financially resilient, what would it be? And how would it address the challenges of AI, digitalization, and an aging population? Who wants to come in first? I can go along the line, or if anybody's bursting to come in. Okay, then I pick on you first.
Yes. I think actually I'm not from the policy field, right? But so I want to refer to this publication that we released because I don't want to represent only my own opinion, but that of the young people who wrote this. And what they argue for is to have a balanced approach, which I would say you cannot focus on only one policy, because what direction you go in with the policies you choose, you are always leaving out or disadvantaging specific groups, either people that are less financially literate, either people that maybe do not have as much work, so they don't build up as much pension, or people that live in countries that have less solid state pensions available. So I think having a balanced approach is one of the things that I would highlight the most, that it cannot be only one avenue explored, because balance is what I think provides security, which is what pension and insurance is in the end all about. And to still give a more specific example to follow to the spirit of your question, cross-border pension schemes, I think, would be very important for young people. Young people are very mobile, not just between countries, but also between jobs. They need capital to move with them. They need their social security net to move with them, which unfortunately, because there's still a lot of, this is not really the case yet at the moment. And I think this would be a huge improvement to young people specifically, and especially if this is something that they don't have to personally invest in, because while personal pension products, I think, are very important, like I say, they cannot be the only thing to be relied on, because like was mentioned on the panel before by my fellow panelists, young people might not be that inclined to start that personal pension from their very first paycheck. They might not have the money to do so, with the cost of living crisis being very active for young people at the moment. So having some kind of forced scheme, I think, actually is beneficial to young people or other vulnerable groups as well that might not individually look into investing for their pension, but may be the most at need or at risk of not having a sufficient pension if they do not engage in these individual investments.
Okay, Alexandra.
For me, it would be, I would like to see member states taking an example from Sweden and using also the recent European Commission's blueprint for ISK, so investment saving account, to mobilize the savings in their countries, also mobilize the young consumers to start investing. Why this would help with resilience, and I think it would just make the resilient choice the easy choice. And it was mentioned here by also in the video that the easy things are the ones that are appealing also to very many young consumers. It has proved, and it has been reconfirmed, and it's being confirmed by the Swedish users of the ISK, that the main, most attractive characteristic of the ISK to them is how easy it is to operate, how easy it is to use and fill in, for example, the tax declaration. It would definitely address the demographic issues. I mean, the earlier you participate in any form of investing, the easier it's going to be to reduce the future pension gaps, and the more pressure it's going to take off from the overstretched public pension systems that we have right away. And this is one of the most acute resilience issues in the aging population, and the European population is one of them. And it can improve quite well the outcomes for consumers, and it's going to be increasingly important for young consumers because of the state of the public pension systems that we have. And it also has been proven that the default easy option, the safe option, is going to most likely, the low cost and transparent one, is going to provide good outcomes in the future for them.
Dick, same question.
What was the question?
The question was...
I would like... No, I know. I know, because it kept me awake a couple of nights, because it's very difficult to make a choice, but sometimes it's challenging to have to make a choice. And I believe that we should turn the strategy of financial education into a strategy of risk education. Because look at today's panel. The word investment, it was all about investment. I haven't heard the word insurance yet, or very few times. Of course, it's logic, because we are thinking about pensions, and so that's a very important element. But an EBIP is different from an investment product, because there are other features that are linked to that, and so on and so on and so on. So I think we have to take that in mind. So if you are doing financial education, then you give people the solution to calculate. While risk education, I believe, is something that is necessary, because we forgot, even my generation, I think, we forgot a little bit to manage risk. And we are in a very risky moment. So I think people will have to learn to look a little bit more after themselves, but especially to manage these risks. And if you know that you have a risk and you better understand the risk, and I'm thinking about all kind of risk. I'm referring to Klaus, when you compare the perspective of the level of risk macroeconomically that we are in front of with the risk that we are talking about, then there are different perspectives in this. But people must then also better understand that risk can be transferred, or risk can be managed, or risk can be prevented, or risk can be reduced. So I believe that that would give a much better framework for resilience than just financial education. But that is a major shift, I believe, that we would need, because then the question is also, okay, how do you then see the effects on the future, like with an AI world and with a cyber risky world and that kind of things? Well, it all fits then better, because for an AI world and a cyber risk world, just financial education is not enough. So that is my preferred option for the long-term future. That should then also go together with a much more positive narrative of all parties involved, also regulators and supervisors, about the positive effects of insurance. What I see over the last years, unfortunately, is that there is focus on the relatively few wrongdoing. In some markets, there are some problems that need to be solved. Okay, so apparently you know where the problems are in these markets. there is regulation, there are supervisors, why not solving it? Instead of creating a new set of rules that is in fact putting a burden, cost and everything on the entire economy, and especially on all those who are not wrongdoing. So this is a shift where we have to change, and I believe that there are, I talked about that I believe that EIOPA introduced very clearly a dynamic and a philosophy of dialogue with the sector. Well, let's discuss the wrong things in a dialogue, but let's also publish all the positive things. Our economy would just not work if there was not insurance.
Okay. Maria, one change you would make?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I agree with everything that was said, which means there's a lot of work ahead for everyone here. But I would also like to add that transparency, and we spoke here that transparency alone doesn't hold it, but transparency with the simplicity of explaining how these things work, right? And the reason why I find this important is because if the consumer understands the product, they hold the industry accountable. And then the protection mechanism kicks in, right? Because if the consumer knows what they're getting into, they start questioning the industry. But if there's no transparency and we can get by not giving all that information to the customer, how will they hold the industry accountable to the things that are happening, you know? So it's another mechanism. I mean, EIOPA is doing a great job of putting community together of industry, of regulators, of supervisors. Invite the consumer in, provide the transparency so they can also keep the checks and balances of this industry. So I would impose a little bit more transparency on the simplicity of conversations on day-to-day.
Wonderful. Hank, same question.
Yes, I think Nick, he wants to give us as supervisors absolute power to arrange all problems. Thank you. But if you're talking about pensions, I think there are two things I want to say. Pensions in our society means we all live longer. That's very good. That's nice. But that means that at policy level, we should decide, and in some countries they are doing that, in some other countries they are lacking, raising pension age. And be clear about that, so that young people know they won't work until 60 or 65, but maybe 70. So that should be clear. Second point, I believe that there are people who won't take a choice, will never take a choice. And so also from policy level, we should push them to make a choice, even if it's a default product where you should invest in. So these are the two main messages I wanted to give.
Well, thank you so much to everyone. We've covered so much ground, from young people to consumer behavior to supervision to digital innovation. Thank you so much for bringing such a diverse range of perspectives to this panel. Let's have a hand for the panelists, everyone. Thank you.